Good evening, folks. Called meeting to order. This meeting takes place in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. There are no additions or deletions to the agenda. So we're to number 4, recommendation that council approve the agenda for the April 14th, 2026 meeting as presented. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Strong. Is there a seconder? By Councillor Fullerton. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Carried unanimous. Oh, and I'll welcome Councillor Greek. He's zooming in tonight, so he's up there on the corner of your screen. So number 5, approval of the minutes. That council approved the March 24th, 2026 meeting minutes as presented. Is there a mover? Moved by Deputy Mayor. Oh, Deputy Mayor.
Just move and I just spoke with our clerk, Kayla, about the minutes were not quite captured as they should have been with regard to the amendment we made last time. So it's just a matter of a clerical change to the increase in the residential and commercial tax rates that were noted in the previous minutes. So of the that's from the March 9th meeting. So just with that change, I would move that they be approved.
Okay, it's been moved with that change. Seconder? Second by Councillor Babineau. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. And then 5.2, that Committee of the Whole approved the March... Should say council. Let's say that council approved the March 17th, 2026 special meeting minutes as presented. I'm prepared to move it. Moved by Councillor Babineau, seconded by Councillor Fullerton. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. There are no presentations. There's no public, well, there's nobody here tonight, just so those watching from home are wondering. So I guess there's no public input or questions. So we'll move on to number 8, which is correspondence. There's really no correspondence to deal with. Number 9 is business arising and unfinished business. There isn't any that I'm aware of. So we'll move right into 10.1. The approval of the town general draft operating budget. And I guess Kathleen's presenting that.
Good evening, everyone. On March 9th, staff presented the draft budget to council, and on March 24th, staff provided a clarification on low-income exemptions, year-over-year staffing comparison, recreation rate changes for softball field, drop-in pickleball fees, and increased rates for the facility rentals. At the March 24th meeting, council expressed concerns regarding budgetary increases, and tonight's agenda provides additional information as requested. And if you would so like, I will take you through the report. On page 2 of the report that was attached, it provides a budgetary summary. To date, the draft operating budget presented to date totals $11,826,300, which included the tax rate with a 2.1% increase for both residential and commercial. This was the base budget for approval. On page 3, we provided a graph which shows the percentage of each expenditure contained in the budget document. 14.6% of that is transportation. 14.6% of that is the wastewater and water and garbage expenditures. RCMP this year is at 10.3% of the overall expenditures, and education is 11%. On page 3 and 4, we will now look at what are some of the major cost increases that have been experienced over the last 7 years. And please stop me at any time. I'm just going down through my notes, or you may want to wait until I'm done. So either way works for me. The RCMP has increased from $794,700, which was the 1920 total for that budget, to $1,209,500 in 26-27, which is an increase of $404,800, or 52.2% over the 7-year period. Education has also increased from $823,200 in 2019-20 to $1,303,200 in 26-27, which is an increase of $480,100, or 58.3% over the 7-year period. Sewer revenue and expenditures have increased as we have been planning for the new wastewater treatment facility and upgrades of the existing infrastructure. On page 4, you will see visuals of the RCMP costs and education costs from 2019 to 2026-27. On page 4 or 5, staff were also asked to provide information on the calculation and explanation of uniform assessment. This calculation represents the value of the municipality's taxable property assessments, plus the value of any grants in lieu that we receive from the province. This is the value that is used to calculate the education tax and other services such as assessment costs. The uniform assessment has increased from 270 million in 2019-20 and to 427.5 million in 26-27, which equals an increase of 58.3%. On page 5, Council also asked about building disposal since 1920. The buildings that were disposed of included the Captain Angus Walters House, the old New Town School, and train station. These proceeds from these sales were reinvested in the town's capital reserve as indicated by the MGA. That is what you have to do with surplus sales of capital goods. There was also a question on the decrease of the 52,500 in conditional revenues, and it is broken down as follows. There was an increase in the Canada Day grant that was budgeted for in the amount of 6,200. There was a decrease of 75,000, which represents an ACOA grant that we had received for the cultural tourism project, which has now since been completed. So that monies will not be coming in as we've received it all to date. And there has been an increase to the District 1 and 2 fire services fee in the amount of $16,300. On page 6, on April 1st, 2024, through the Provincial Municipal Service Exchange Agreement, saw the province take over 100% of the costs for regional housing costs and correctional services. The costs of these services had equaled 78,000, and these funds have been redirected to the capital reserves. So instead of us having to expend those funds out and just offset tax rates, we've actually put those towards the reserves so that we can build our funds for future capital projects. Page 6, sewer rates were adjusted in 22-23 to include the amount of anticipated debt servicing for the wastewater treatment upgrade for the sequence batch reactor, or the new water treatment plant that is now being constructed. The annual amount that has been reserved is being used to mitigate the town's borrowing for the capital project. The rates have been adjusted annually by CPI, and it's also, we wanted to note that there are $9 million in sewer projects included in the 5-year capital budget, which started in 26-27. De-transfer taxes for Lunenburg are collected at 1.5% on property transactions. The town takes 1% of that, 325,000, and puts into the capital reserves, and 162,500, or 0.5%, is used to offset the tax rate. Staff also wanted to note that the heating fuel has increased by 57%, or 83,800, and insurance has increased by 80%, which equals $113,000 each year, and has outpaced CPI. These expenses are in addition to the RCMP and education costs. Other considerations are service level increases and staffing. I can't find the page. I have no nails, just bear with me. Council also asked about the median assessment for 26-27, and that has been calculated to 286,200, and this is the capped median. The recommended option by staff is option B, which is a 10-cent residential increase for a tax rate of $1.476, and at the median tax rate and the median assessment of $286,200, this would equal a yearly tax bill of $4,224 compared to $3,924 in 25-26. Staff would like to see option B so that we can continue to build our infrastructure that would match or try to keep pace with the capital investments that are required. And this would equal a budget of $12,155, $12,155,700, a residential increase of 10 cents and a commercial increase of 15 cents, and an infrastructure reserve contribution of $220,000. And that is my report.
Thank you very much. Anybody around the table have any questions for Kathleen? Councillor Fullerton?
Just a comment. Thank you for all that information. That really helps. And I was really pleased to see all the arithmetic, and I did it for me and my property taxes, and with the option that you're recommending. So just thank you. That was great.
Thank you. Anybody else? Deputy Mayor?
That's what I always do, Councillor Fulton, too. Just gives you that that perspective that helps put it in light, and the figures that staff provide with the various assessment amounts and what the actual dollar amounts will be in relation to the suggested increases or the options for increases is really helpful. And I think it's very important, and it's been highlighted in what has been shared with us, but the significant increases in the costs of policing and education, and then of course further on in things like heating, fuel, or insurance, which are things we are, we have no alternative but to absorb and to provide for those increases in costs. So it's helped me come to a better understanding of the quite radical, what seems to be quite drastic increase in our budget amounts in total. I still do have some questions just to further clarify. So and again, just by way of educating us better as to how these things work. The education amount that we pay is based on a uniform assessment formula.
So what happens with that? And that was the explanation of uniform assessment. So they take and do that for every unit in the province. They come up with a total. And I'm not certain about this part. I think that municipalities used to be responsible for approximately 10% of the overall education budget. I'm not sure if that is still the percent or if that percent has increased. They would say if it was $100 million budget, that we would then have to pay 10% of that as units. They would then take all of those uniform assessments across the province. They would divide the total of those uniform assessments into that to give us a rate. So then each individual unit pays our uniform assessment at that uniform rate. So that is, it's kind of a way of sharing the overall cost of education.
Yeah. And I guess the takeaway for me that I think it's important for our citizens to understand is that because we have relatively high assessments in our community because, for good reason, we have that market value. And so that does mean that we pay more for some of those things like education costs. So we kind of pay the premium, if that's a fair way of describing it. But thank you. And with the decrease in conditional reserves, which as you pointed out is mainly from the ACOA grant that we won't be getting this year, the amount that we would have saved by having no further expenses for that project, or that it was probably mostly funded by the project. So there's no sort of yeah, supplemental savings from that amount. So there. With regard of the sale of the properties, then, and as you said, that goes into capital reserves, which is a good,
That is correct.
yeah, so a good investment of that money that was created, so it gets put to good use. Was there a significant, and I know it's always been the argument that there's a significant costs to owning properties, so what I'm getting at is if we sold them, then we no longer have the expenses that accompany them as well. So not only would we have gotten the benefit of the sale price, of the sale dollar amount, but there would have been some savings in what we would have expended to maintain them. And I'm guessing that's probably fairly minimal in the grand scheme of things. So
It truly is. When we were looking at this a couple of weeks ago, I think that at the time that we sold these, what was in the budgets to maintain them was less than $10,000 a building. So, I mean, if you were expending lots of money to maintain your facilities that you were keeping, and we really don't have that many anymore. I mean, I can think of maybe one or two, if that, that, we're trying to ensure that those that we maintain, that we are ensuring that they are watertight, that they have, that we can actually, if council so chooses, we can either redevelop them, we can rent them, we can sell them, whatever council chooses. But then you would have a building that would either be worth using for another purpose or to get a better price when you sell.
okay, to keep going. Thank you. With regard to things like heating fuel and insurance, and I wasn't quite sure from, without spending more time on each line of the budget, are those costs spread across the various departments? And see Jacob shaking his head. Yes.
They are, and we go for competitive bidding on those I don't know if that was a 5-year tender or a 3-year, but yes, they are spread across the different areas of the budget. Of course, engineering and works would have a bigger amount because of them using the vehicles.
Through your chair, just for further clarification on insurance, there's only very limited insurance companies that can actually insure municipalities at the levels that we need for maintaining coverage. So what we have is basically the one of the best insurance levels that we can get.
Some just quick one too. The water wastewater supervisor position that we're is one of the full-time positions. I'm just curious, was that all covered in our operating budget, or would any of that have been taken into account with our water rate?
So that would be a 50-50 split. Yep.
I have more, your worship, but there's a beep.
Keep going.
Okay. So where are we? So just with the it's unfortunate timing with the and I raised this at our last meeting with the fact that our council hadn't had a chance to fully discuss and come to terms with what our strategic priorities are. We were very comfortable with where we were in the previous year, and I think it actually would have served us well had we had the time to get sort of an evaluation of the progress we'd made, because I would suggest it was fairly significant. We've moved a fair bit along with that, so that was really good. But it's hard now facing this new budget and not being 100% without that background information, feeling that we know we have our newest priorities covered off or identified, and that staff share them and have reflected that in the budget provided. So just kind of, I know one of the main ones that we've been discussing is the, and with the luxury of having Alan here too, the idea of the updating of our planning documents and so on. So I guess in light of that situation, just putting the question out for community development and our planning department about whether or not there's capacity in the budget that's been presented to do a review. If there's a draft plan or something, I think, of how to tackle that. Is there not?
To the deputy through the chair, we have been having some ongoing conversations regarding capacity limitations. Lunenburg is a very popular place to be. It's a popular place to conduct business. And so we are seeing a general uptick in the number, type, and diversity of development applications, which takes time. We are currently engaged in a conversation with Modal to have some additional services provided to alleviate some of that capacity limitation at this stage. So, but those are ongoing at this point. So no conclusion as of yet.
So through your worship, the but the capacity to do that is within the capacity of the budget that we have here. Is that fair?
I actually am not aware of where that would be within the budget at this point. That was not something that we reviewed at this stage. So,
Through you, Chair, there is a level of support within that scope, but again, right now with bringing on staff, it's getting them up to speed, but also getting us to this point where can we get them some relief through these other processes so that we can get them focused on the MPS and the LUB changes that council would like us to proceed with. So still anticipating that we can have work start in this fiscal. May carry over into the next fiscal, but it's dependent on level of engagement, depth of changes that are seeking, and then going through that process. But still anticipated that we'll be able to accomplish aspects of it within this fiscal year, possibly carrying over into next fiscal.
Any?
So one final question with respect to the capital reserves ask and the I think it's fair to say from my perspective that I've been my appreciation of the need for the capital reserve fund to be increased is you know, you've made the case, and I can appreciate that need is real and will provide long-term benefits to the community and reducing our need to borrow to the degree that we would otherwise have to. But still grappling in my mind with where that sweet spot of managing already significant increases in service costs to our members of the community. And I'm just wondering, from this year, the ask, you know, there were options for, increase to what would be a basic budget amount to do that. And with the understanding that, I guess before I took a closer look at the budget, we are already rating for some of that work to be done with under fiscal services. We've rated for 100,000 to go into a capital reserve, plus the fact that the former amount that was used for the housing prices and those things have been, you know, they've continued as part of the budget and then been used in as capital reserve. So we have that 178,000. That doesn't get us, you know, the case that we need to invest more is a strong one. I guess I'm just from a policy perspective or from looking down the road, like another year, so our next fiscal year, how do we address that? Are we, would staff be anticipating that they would, whatever amount we decide might be reasonable this year would be the amount that will be added into a draft budget for an upcoming year? Or was there thought given to how that might be handled in future?
So when the budgets are put together, there is a 5-year capital plan that's put in place. Lisa does estimates of what is required for each fiscal period. We know that we cannot maintain the level of improvements that have been identified in partial capital asset planning, projects that Tyson has identified that really need to take place, projects that council have identified. We know that we need to enhance what we're putting in reserves. We also know that when we go into our next big capital project, that if we need to have a certain amount of money in order to even trigger applying for some of these big grants, like we did with the wastewater treatment, we were able to get $9 million because we were going to have our $2 million in reserve at that time. So, it's a pre-planning, but it's not anything that you can say definitively that next year you're going to need this much money, because that much money may triple, or you may be able to get that triple from a grant that's being offered. But if we don't have the funds to use as seed funding, we're not going to be able to progress like we would like to progress. And as a team, and I understand that, council have spoken as well, that they want to see us progress and move some of these bigger projects ahead. And that is how we are trying to ensure that we have the financial stability to be able to provide that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Councillor Strong?
In reading what's in front of me, there's one number 2, which is option B. It says this is the best compromise for affordability, hence the staff recommendation. Can somebody explain to me through the chair, somebody explain to me how it is the best compromise for affordability?
One of the options that we have, if that isn't a chosen option, is that the increases will also be made to the low income tax exemption. So that if you are in the category, and I just take me a second so option B, if you have a gross income of 40,000 or less, you would get an exemption of 2,000. If you have an income of 40,000 to 45, you would have an exemption of 1,000, and from 45 to 51, you would have 500. So that is the more that we are asking to pay, the more we're trying to support those that need it. So that is how we're trying to balance a very difficult equation.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Yeah, not really a question, but again, a comment. I think that's a really good approach, keeping in mind that a significant increase is going to make a big difference in some people's households. But I think that we need to be proactive with reserve funding, and as you said, it disqualifies us if we don't have money in the bank when we go for a grant. So I'm all of this information presented in this way has been very helpful. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Just within the affordability aspect, I think, Council, when we're looking at, it's not just affordability for the individual person, it's the affordability of our ability to borrow and continue borrowing for other projects. I refer you back to the Tannery Road example or culvert that's in the report here that really shows, and this comes back to the wastewater treatment plant. We can borrow less because we invested in our reserves and we're paying less in interest going into the long term, which actually frees up capital monies for other projects projects that we have down the line. So investing smart now leads us to better investments and better projects that we can be prepared for as we look at our 5-year capital plan and beyond within that scope. So affordability comes in several factors when we're looking at this, and I just wanted to make sure that was looped in as well.
Really petty, and it's really petty cash at this point because the deputy mayor has asked most of the questions that I have on my list. I question the value of dog licenses when it's the cost is and the number that we have is actually equaled out by the cost of the licenses themselves. Are we being aggressive with those dog licenses? Because 70 licenses in the town of Lunenburg, I see 70 dogs every day in the morning. So there's that one. And then the bandstand, again, another petty cash thing, but we've just gone through a major refit of it. And I see that the rental policy hasn't been touched that I'm aware of, and it's now still at $1,000 a day. And I don't know, special prices for weddings and things like that. That may be something else that we need to look at. And I guess that's, yeah, the dog thing really bothers me because I buy the dog tags for my dogs and I know everybody else isn't. They learn the hard way that if you don't have the tag, you pay $50 to get it back from Chester. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Maybe looking at all of our rental policies. I know we did for, and I should have brought it up earlier, I know we did for pickleball, for example, but let's do it.
Through you, Chair, just within the scope of the dog licenses, it is something that we want to target further just from the amount of people that we do have with pets and dogs within the community. It is something that bylaw wants to look at. So we can look at processes of how to increase that and encourage. The other one is as a facility for all of our rental facilities. So we're even looking at a nice rental facility policy right now with recreation, but this goes to our fields. This goes to the bandstand, this goes to everything we should be looking at for rental and rental availability and what's reasonable and what's fair that's comparable to other communities.
Bandstand is really looking good, and I know we need to maintain it going forward, so.
Any other questions? Councillor Daphne.
I don't really have any questions, just a comment. I grew up in a family that I know some people thought we were like living the dream, but my parents always believed in putting a little bit aside because you never know. And I still live like that. And one of the things when I was campaigning was to protect, I guess, Lunenburg or see her grow. And I don't feel that we are in that position right now without helping the reserves. Now, I also know that some of you at home know that I only rent. So you're probably thinking, oh, this doesn't really affect her. But I have friends. I have friends who are single moms who do have a home. And any decision that we make here is going to affect friends of mine. There are people in the community that can afford any kind of increase. And I'm not saying that to punish them, but we all chose to live here for a reason. And I think it's time, in whatever degree, whatever option it is, that we start to look after her a little bit more. We want to grow. We all want the good infrastructure. We all want, the potholes on Victoria Road filled or whatever. But I think we have to make a hard decision tonight, and I know we're not going to be popular in whatever way we go. But remember, this is for the betterment of the community. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Babineau?
I guess I'll go next. No questions. This was a great deal of information that was like really well put together. So thank you. And I'll probably keep this fairly short and sweet. I understand what we're trying to do here, and I can see the logic in it. But I think for me personally, I just don't feel that this is the time where, you know, residents of Lunenburg are facing increases that we've already put upon them in a number of ways, and also increases that have nothing to do with us, but still affect our residents a great deal, things like food and gas. And nobody knows what tomorrow is going to bring from a geopolitical and economic sense. So unfortunately, like I would love to just say, let's go for an increase that's going to get us some significant reserves, but I just can't support it for this fiscal myself. Thanks.
Anybody else? Like Deputy Mayor?
Just another quick one that I had written down and forgot to ask was with respect to the category of other equipment, which is noted in the fiscal services where we're talking about general capital reserve and the various reserves that are there. I wasn't quite sure what that referenced. It was $1,051,000 in reserve for other equipment. I didn't see a note on that, but maybe I missed it. And it'd just be helpful to know. That is our biggest amount.
Page.
See, my pages are cut off.
Oh.
It's the last section. So it's in the fiscal services section of the budget. And it's number 7 in the numbered sections in that. The heading of the section is General Capital Reserve.
51 out of 55. 51 out of 55?
Yeah.
Timestamp. Oh, I was right. And what is it we're looking?
There's a little chart there with all the different reserve funds that are, or reserve.
Other, yeah.
This might be fire, might be, yeah, I didn't.
Various items, and I don't really want to comment without being able to have a look at it, but in the capital reserve, we have public works equipment, we have fire equipment, we have a reserve that's uncategorized for other items such that, or special projects. So that would be where the money from the sale of buildings would go. We have the gas tax funding, deed for transfer tax, and I'm not sure if that's where the grid funding went last year, which the grid funding would have been, it's either grid or half. I just don't recall because I think we have something like 15 different types of reserves within the reserves. But I can, if you want me to pop downstairs and have a look, I can.
Well, I was just thinking it's probably restricted in some way as to its use.
If it's capital reserve, it can only be used for capital. So like special operating reserve, you could take and redirect that funding to offset a travel that you wanted to do. If you didn't have enough money, you can bring money in from the reserve for things like that. But with special capital reserve, that is funded by a special project normally. You can only use it for capital purposes. So you can only use it to repair a building, or you can only use it to buy a truck, or you can only use it to pave or something of a capital nature.
Just wondering if it's a benefit, something we can leverage, I guess, in looking for some of those funds. That's all, I guess.
I know a lot of that would have already been committed this year in the capital budgeting process. So it's probably not at $1 million right now.
Okay. Thanks.
But I can send an email first thing in the morning or this evening if you like. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So I keep forgetting Councillor Greek, who looks like he's been kidnapped. Do you have anything you'd like to say or any comments?
Not at this time. I've got to be honest. My voice is starting to give out a little bit, so I'll probably be pretty quiet tonight.
Okay, thank you. Just thought I'd give you a chance to ask for help if you needed some. I'm not sure what your background is there, but it reminds me of some TV shows I watch. So stay safe. So I guess if there's no other questions, I guess I'll have a couple of comments to make. Number one is we haven't raised the tax rate in 5 or 6 years, which again, I was part of for some of those years and was a mistake. But to say that our taxpayers haven't never received an increase is inaccurate. For example, 2022 or 23, the CPI was 7.3 or 7.8%. So even those that were capped were hit with that increase. Since COVID's basically been ended, CPI's always been about 2% or more. It hasn't been below 2% to my knowledge since about 2022 or 23. So again, that doesn't make it any better because as was noted here tonight, CPI has gone up on average 2 to 3%, yet our CMP, education and fuels went up over 50%, and insurance is the one that drives me crazy. Insurance went up in the last 5 years 80%. Like that's absolutely insane, to be honest. And unfortunately for municipalities, we just can't, go online and go shopping for our insurance. There's a handful of people that actually insure municipalities. So we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place that way. But again, I am very concerned with what's going on around us especially the last 3 weeks to a month. The price of oil has gone up 30 to 40% or more in the last month. And they could keep going because nobody knows what's going on the other side of the world right now, or what's going on, quite frankly, below us right now. It just depends what day it is and what mood somebody's in. So that does scare me, the way things are going. And the way I see this budget, whichever option we choose or whatever we decide to go with, unfortunately, no matter how good our low income threshold is, because it is better than even most of our neighbors are. So we do try to help the low income out with our low income threshold. But again, the low income, quite frankly, probably can't afford any increase. And the people that can afford whatever increase we want to pass will be the ones we're going to hear from. No matter what increase we decide to go with, they'll be the ones that'll complain and blow us up on social media. And then it's the folks like the middle class or the average Joe that lives in town that probably won't say much of anything, but they're used to certain progressive increases. So I guess my thought is that it was a mistake the last 5, 6 years of not raising taxes because we were, thriving off increased assessments as well and what we were getting from that. But in my opinion, if we raise it at CPI for the next couple of years and hopefully be able to put some away, or maybe next year the economy looks much better and things have changed across the pond and down below, a little bit more secure with the cost of oil and fuel and everything, then we might want to look at, a bigger increase at that time. But at this time, I know which way I'll be leaning at this time, just because of all my time, really, quite frankly, being an adult, this is one of the scarier times when it comes to costs right now in the world. It's actually one of the scarier times in my lifetime in the world right now, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen tonight when we go home. It just depends, again, like I said, what mood certain person's in. So again, I will vote whatever way I decide, but I'll probably be going for the alternative that's on here, but that's up to council. And there's a motion there that needs to be made by somebody, and second it to move forward. So if someone's willing to make a motion, whatever it may be, if you want to choose one of the options or the alternative, that's totally up to council because I can't make a motion. So is somebody prepared to make a motion so we can move forward?
Through you, Chair, does council want 5 minutes to think and take a recess?
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess. I'll go get Alex, save him, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, council.
Okay, I'll call the meeting back to order. So where we are is we're basically at the point where someone needs to make a motion on one of the options. I guess there's basically 5 options plus an alternative there in front of us. So is someone prepared to make a motion? Deputy Mayor?
I was just going to suggest that the other option is a deferral of a decision. And I would just throw that out for consideration of my fellow councillors. Given the one point I made earlier this evening was that it may give us just that little bit of extra time to inquire of staff that the priorities that we jointly discussed and although we haven't gotten confirmed with the report back yet, I think we all know basically what they were and have a level of comfort that we're aligned, that those priorities are aligned and accommodated in the budget that we're presented. So that's another option for consideration.
Thank you. Either way, I mean, I think the budget document we reviewed quite a few times. This is, I think, the 3rd or 4th or 5th time we've been in this room because we had a couple public meetings. Obviously, the residents aren't really into the budget at this point, which sort of blows my mind a bit. But anyways, we have one person here tonight, which is the first time since I've been elected that we've had one person in the audience. So again, unfortunately, this is your toughest decision you're going to make in the next 12 months, but it has to be made. And like I said earlier, it doesn't matter which way we go unless we hold the line, which I would not recommend. We're going to annoy some people, right? So no matter what our reasoning is. So what we need is someone to make a motion of some sort, or we can sit here all night. It's not going away. So Councillor Babineau.
I am happy to make a motion that I am not sure that I will get seconded, but I will put it out there anyways. And that would be that we go with the alternative that's been presented. And I have the wording here in front of me, but it doesn't include what all of those rates would be, the residential and. Yeah, but that's for option B. Yeah. I'm going with the alternative, so those rates would be different afterwards. Like they would change.
So the residential would be $1.40 an hour. Commercial would be $3.429, and seasonal would be $2.572. So that's a 2.1% increase.
Okay. All right. So I would move that council not establish a new infrastructure reserve in fiscal 26-27 and approve the town general operating budget totaling $11,826,300 with a residential increase of 2.9 cents and a commercial increase of 7.1 cents, which is a CPI adjustment of 2.1% to the tax rates. The residential tax rate would be 1.45 per $100 of assessment. No. 405, sorry, 1.405 per $100 of assessment. The commercial tax rate of 3.429 per $100 of assessment, and the seasonal tourist tax rate of 2.572 per $100 of assessment.
So it's been moved. Is there a seconder?
You still have to.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. But those would all be the same as what's written above. Okay. And a residential sewer rate of $750.82 per dwelling unit, a non-residential sewer rate of 0.7175 per $100 of assessment, and a church sewer rate of $440.98 per quarter.
Okay, so that motion has been moved. It's basically the alternative in your report. Is there a seconder of that motion? Let's go. Is there a seconder of that motion for a second time?
So just to be clear, this is not providing anything as a special reserve.
Correct. At this time, it's not, depending on what happens. But so, okay, so I've called it twice. I'll call it a third time. Well, does anyone want to second the motion? Okay, that motion dies on the floor. So does somebody else want to make a motion? Deputy Mayor.
I'll move an amount as well. Again, just for the feel of the room. Since no one took me up on my first suggestion of a deferral, which I would also have been comfortable with, but I would have some level of comfort that our priorities can be satisfied within the framework that's provided with this budget, and I would move that council approve the 2026-27 town general operating budget as presented, totaling, and I don't have that number here, but it's the one that's associated with option E. And those are in different parts of our.
$12,054,200 is the amount.
Yes. And the tax rates were in that chart I had, which was 1.455 per $100 of assessment. And that's the residential rate. Commercial also 3.479. Thank you. Seasonal tax rate of 2.609 per 100 of assessment, and residential sewer rate of 750.82 per dwelling unit. Non-residential sewer rate of as 0.7175 per $100 of assessment, and church sewer rate of 440.98 per quarter. Yes. Yeah. Did I? Yeah. I did.
Okay, so it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder to that motion? Okay, it's seconded by Councillor Strong. Any further discussion on the motion?
I think it's worth talking about the rationale for making the motion. And as I had mentioned in the when I was questioning this, it's a matter of I very much appreciate my Councillor Babineau's concern, and I think it's valid, and I think it's where I started a few weeks ago. And I think the additional information that staff provided was what I needed to get a better appreciation of a need for increasing our capital reserve. I have seen from the examples they provided that without stepping up now, despite the global uncertainty and the other increases we have had to take on is the fact that we will be further down the road if we do not, that we will have to incur greater debt to achieve the same amount of maintenance improvements, infrastructure improvements and things. Having had the luxury of serving on council before, or the perspective of that luxury, I should say, some of these projects were on our radar 15 years ago. So they are not new needs. They are well established, and we are a small unit. And so unfortunately, we do have to budget very carefully and look at the long range, which I do believe we have done. And we have benefited in the past from being able to take advantage of borrowing rates and have been very successful in getting good partnering situations, but the prices just keep going up. And you don't have to look very far from our own experience in recent budgets and with the costs and the astronomical costs of things. So not taking advantage of the opportunity now to make some investment or a greater amount, because I was pleased that we are now rating to a smaller extent for capital reserves, but taking a greater, making a greater investment in that, I think, is really important for the long-term viability of the town operations. So that's the rationale for the motion I made.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments they'd like to make? Anybody else around the table? Councillor Greig? Who? Kathleen?
I just wanted to point out that just so everybody is aware that those are not the same exemption rates, so that you are aware that they change, and I didn't want that to get approved without making you aware of that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Well, yeah, I'll make a comment, I guess. I respect and appreciate everybody's opinion at this table, and it's democracy, whatever vote goes through. But I think that as a town, we have to start, first of all, looking at some growth somewhere within the town, because we can't continue to keep raising the taxes on the 2,394 people that live here. Number two, we sit here at this table and talk to death about affordable housing and housing for folks that we have no control over, and we never will. And yet the only thing we have control over is the tax rate to keep people that actually have homes in their homes currently. So because of basically what's going on around us, I will be voting against the motion, but that's just my personal opinion. So I just thought I'd get that out there. Any other comments, questions by anybody? Okay. So seeing no other comments, call for the vote. All those in favor of the vote, which is to go with option E in front of us, raise your right hand. Okay. All those opposed, raise your right hand. So the motion carried 4-3 with Councillors Fullerton, Councillors Babineau, and the mayor voting in the negative. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll move on. Do we have to take a break, or do we have the numbers? You had said about maybe taking a break.
The numbers were.
Yeah, where she gave the numbers.
Were provided in the motion.
So we're good then?
You're good.
Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to 10.2. Torn horse-drawn vehicle bylaw. There's a motion there, but we'll let Kayla present first, and then we'll have any questions for her.
All right, thank you. So council has seen this several times at this point. So council last reviewed this bylaw on March 3rd, which is when we held the public hearing for this one. At that time, council asked staff to explore provisions related to shade structures, as well as differentiating fees for training vehicles. So the draft before you actually has two small tweaks to that effect. So this draft does include provisions respecting shade structures under section 21, But as a minor clarification, I would recommend we put at the operator's expense, just making that very clear that should a shade structure be installed, it is at their expense and not the town's. Staff are also recommending a small addition to Schedule B, Section 2, which would just clarify that training vehicles wouldn't get that $500 vehicle fee, but it would still have to be aligned with all the provisions of the bylaw, so still respecting road safety, insurance, all the things that would keep it safe. So other than those few tweaks, the bylaw remains unchanged from what council sees today and what they saw last time at March 3rd. So that's that. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And just a reminder, for second reading, any member of council who wasn't present for the public hearing on March 3rd, per a procedural policy, you have to abstain from voting, unfortunately. All right, that's it. I'll keep it short, but if there's any questions, let me know.
Does anyone have any questions of Kayla for the bylaw? Okay, if there's no other questions, if someone could move the recommendation, the deputy mayor, I think, has to sit on the sidelines for this one because she was on vacation during this one. So just someone prepared to move this one. Moved by Councillor Strong.
I'm going to move a motion that council approve second and final reading of the tour and horse-drawn vehicle bylaw as presented, repealing bylaw 56, the hack and trolley bylaw.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daphne. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried unanimous, with the deputy mayor abstaining from the vote. So we'll move on to 10.3, inclement weather and temporary facility closure policy. And Paul, are you doing that one? Okay.
Thank you, Council. This was presented at the Committee of the Whole in March, just as a review of the inclement weather and temporary facility closure policy. With the ongoing winter storms and situations we had this year, we saw several times where we had to close facilities or temporarily close facilities, but didn't have a policy in place that outlined process of how we determine that and how we move forward and how do we engage with both council, citizens, as well as staff. So this policy really gives us structure for how do we engage and how do we make those decisions. And at that time, that the Committee of the Whole was to be moved forward to a council meeting for ratification. So before you, unchanged is the inclement weather and temporary facility closure policy.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Paul? Deputy Mayor.
I mentioned this when we spoke earlier with the CAO earlier today. Just that I'm pleased to see the idea of instituting a policy like this for reference for our citizens and ourselves. I'm concerned about the second part of it, which is with I think it's entitled Administrative Procedures. And it's very much more the operational nuts and bolts of which is, how it is entitled. But I'd really appreciate the opportunity to further discuss with staff how, what these policies look like and how they are presented publicly. And so I would like to see us defer this for further internal communication on how this looks going forward.
Okay. And there is no rush for this. I would hope that we don't have to use this until November of fall, but fingers crossed. Any other comments? Councillor Daphne.
Just a little nitpicky one, Paul. Number 6, internal communications. It says following a decision of the CAO to delay opening closed facilities or reduce services due to inclement weather, hazardous conditions, service disruptions, the CAO will communicate the decision by email to their direct reports. I'd feel more comfortable if you would add text, because what if there's, God forbid, and I don't want to say it, Power outage. Yeah, power outage, right? And I know for me, and it's different because it's staff, but I only check my email, as you well know, at night. So that's that part. And I am on the lines with the deputy mayor. I have a few administrative questions that I'd like to have cleared up. So that's where I stand on this.
Okay, so after hearing Deputy Mayor and Councillor Daphne speak, why don't we get this added once again to a future council meeting or committee of the whole meeting once again if you want to. I mean, we can take it back to committee of the whole. So that's where we can have more discussion on it. Whatever you all prefer.
I think, if I may, yeah, I think once we clarify the questions I have that I think are more administrative than anything else, which is difficult to sort of sort through in a public discussion, that it's probably fine to bring it back to a council meeting so that we don't have to go through another step. I don't think it needs that other step probably, but
Okay, so let's look at putting this on a council agenda in mid-May or late May, depending on how the agendas look. Okay, everyone good with that? Good friendly agreement? Okay, so we'll go on to 10.4 carryover projects from the town capital budget, community development. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so thank you, council. So this is a report from Mark Kiley. He's on vacation right now, so I'll fill in for it. So this report, it outlines that we've been working on switching out the displays. There's 19 displays around town that have faded, need a lot of work on interpretation. We started this project last year. However, it wasn't going to be finished until at least this fiscal year. We do have approval from ACOA for carryover funds for the project, similar to what we have with the capital projects that were presented previously by Tyson. We would like to carry over the amount of $20,000 to complete 19 interpretive plaques that need to be replaced within the town limits here.
Councillor Strong.
I move that council approve the carryover of the interpretive panels for parks. Not sure about the parks. Does that have to be in there? Amount of $20,000 from the 25-26 town capital budget into the 26-27 town capital budget funded from operating reserves.
So moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Babineau. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. So now we're on to notice of motions, information requests, and council reports. I'll start to my left this week. So Councillor Fullerton.
Just very quickly, just to bring people up to speed, the Lunenburg County Accessibility Advisory Committee met last week in person for a change, which was kind of nice. And of interest to our municipal unit is possibly a course that is being offered by NSCC called Disability Support Training, which is recommended for council and staff of the municipal units. And they're going to follow up with additional information about that course and a link in terms of dates. And I think that it's an online course. And I think that was it. Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Greek.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Babineau.
Nothing from me as well.
Deputy Mayor.
No, I was just going to try to reference my calendar, but I know that there is an event tomorrow night. I believe it was this evening and tomorrow night. Do I have that right? For waterfront strategic planning. So I think it's open to the public and people are invited to come. And I certainly plan to be there tomorrow night. That's a very important part of our community. So I'm happy to participate in the strategic planning process for that.
Yes, it's at the fire hall at 6:30 tomorrow night. It's tonight and tomorrow night, and they had asked us to share it again today. They want as many people to come as possible, and if you have comments or questions, that's the place to raise them, because the waterfront is an integral part of who we are, what we may become. So it's important for everybody to get out and voice your opinion or your ideas. Councillor Daphne.
I attended the sensory concert today at LAMP in Tamaz, played the piano for us. And it was wonderful to leave the world outside for that short of time. And I want to thank LAMP for offering these concerts. The volunteer recognition event is next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at the Fire Hall. Please come and celebrate our volunteers, and maybe you'll find an organization that you can connect with. And finally, the best news of all, the Philadelphia Flyers and the Montreal Canadiens are playoff bound. The Maple Leafs have been out of the playoffs since November.
Thank you. Councillor Strong.
A happy birthday goes to Tom McFall and Liz Powers. I also do want to remind people about the dog licenses. I made light of it earlier, but 66 dogs doesn't add up in my mind. And you will find out the hard way. We did have a neighbor of mine ended up having his dog impounded, and it costs $50 to get your dog back. So it's worth the $15 or $20 that it is to register your dog.
Thank you. And I don't really have anything tonight except that, again, this month looks like a very busy month. Tomorrow night, of course, is the Waterfront Association thing, the strategic planning meeting. Thursday morning, there's a citizenship a ceremony at the Lunenburg Academy, at LAMP, up in Lunenburg Academy. So again, it's our honor with the organization of the government and that to host that. This will be the third year in a row that I'm aware of. So it's a great honor for the town of Lunenburg. And basically, I'd just like to take this opportunity that we're finally past it, that I'd like to thank staff, all staff, for the time spent, all the directors, and especially the finance department for the time and effort spent on this budget document. I know it's very time consuming. I know that some of our staff haven't been 100% healthy. Kathleen should probably be kidnapped with Alex the way she's feeling right now. So again, she came in this week and came to the meeting tonight. So again, thank you very much to staff. I don't know where we'd be without the commitment and dedication of the great staff we have. So thank you very much. If there's nothing else, if you have items, like always, for consideration at the committee whole level, you can just email Kayla or Paul, and we'll try to get them on there, depending on how big the meeting agendas are. The motion action list is there for us to follow and to basically for staff and our to make sure we stay on track, I guess. And then lastly, I need a motion to go into closed session because there are some issues in closed session tonight. Moved by Councillor Strong, seconded by Councillor Fullerton. Thank you very much, and thanks for coming, nobody. Thanks.